Nathan had negotiated marriages for dictators, criminals, and monsters, but when the most feared warlord in the galaxy walked in and asked him to find her someone who would choose her, he saw something no one else had ever noticed. She was terrified of dying alone. Sitting at his desk on a high-security Karathi military base, Nathan Cole reviewed the file for Warlord Vyraksha Dread-Claw. He traced over the reports with practiced eyes and sighed, tapping the side of his nose where years of diplomatic meetings had worn away patches in his wedding ring tan line. The dossier revealed nothing new about her. She was a Karathi female warrior who had killed thousands across 12 systems. Yet now he saw something different. His door slid open without warning, and Nathan looked up to see Vyraksha standing before him like the shadow of an oncoming storm. Her massive frame filled half his office, crimson skin stretched taut over sinewy muscles covered in jagged scars from 100 battles won. Long silver, black hair was woven into warrior braids with red threads for victory, and her black claws clicked against metal as she moved. "Find me someone," Vyraksha said flatly, her voice low but commanding enough to make his guards back away. Yet there was something in the tone that betrayed unease rather than threat, an edge of desperation behind the strength. Nathan raised a brow. "Warlord Dread-Claw." She stood rigid and tense like a coiled spring ready to unleash fury, yet her amber eyes flickered nervously around his office as if she were unsure what might happen next. It was clear from reports that every person who crossed paths with Vyraksha fled in terror, but Nathan had faced worse. "Who is this someone you seek?" he asked gently, not breaking eye contact, despite the intimidating presence across from him. His calm demeanor didn't waver even as a guard rushed to his side, weapon drawn. "And why do they need me for that?" Vyraksha's lips tightened into a thin line before she spoke again with a voice like steel against stone. "You are the human who finds mates," she clarified, without blinking once at Nathan or her armed guards. Her pupils dilated slightly as if trying to gauge his reaction, and then widened in surprise when it seemed he remained unfazed by her mere presence. She couldn't hide the flicker of uncertainty in those fierce eyes, and a more they revealed fear gnawing underneath her warrior pride. "And what would this person need from me?" Nathan asked curiously, while filing away that subtle change for later analysis. The warlord was unique. None of his other clients had ever begged him to choose their mate on behalf of someone else, let alone a warlord who could crush any planet at will with her bare hands. Vyraksha's shoulders sagged slightly, and she shifted uncomfortably. Her massive form seemed to shrink despite its size. "Find me." Her voice broke for an instant before regaining composure enough to command once more, though it lacked the usual venomous power. "Choose someone who will take my bloodline." He noted that the term take rather than marry or claim. She didn't want just any partner, but one specific type. "And why do you think I can choose such a person for you?" he asked coolly. Vyraksha's clawed fingers curled into fists at her sides, and Nathan noticed how they trembled slightly. She straightened up quickly, eyes narrowing, as if trying to push away vulnerability that was not typical of this legendary warrior. "You have seen the galaxy," she said with a growl. "Show me someone who is worthy." As if by unspoken agreement, her guards disappeared from the room without another word. Nathan nodded slowly, absorbing all cues and implications in front of him. This woman commanded respect out of fear, but there was something more here, an underlying plea for what she had never received, genuine choice based on mutual desire instead of a weaponized alliance. He leaned back slightly against his chair, considering her request seriously. "Tell me," Nathan began gently, "what is it about this that you need so badly?" Her gaze sharpened to razor sharp focus. Vyraksha's hand rose unbidden towards the scar on her left cheek, where a previous opponent had nearly taken off half her face. She touched it briefly, and then dropped back into herself. "Bloodline," was all she said, voice steely once more but lacking conviction beneath layers of scars both physical and emotional. "I am last." Something shifted in his understanding as pieces clicked together. This wasn't just about finding a mate for power or conquest, it went deeper than that. She wanted someone to choose her, because no one ever had before. "And you want me?" He trailed off, searching for the right phrasing. "To find you, not simply anyone suitable but specifically someone who sees past your reputation as Warlord Dread-Claw." Those amber eyes flashed briefly with unaccustomed gratitude, though she maintained a mask of indifference. "Yes," came her clipped answer. Nathan leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the desk and folding hands together thoughtfully. The weight of this request settled heavily between them. He felt both the immense responsibility that rested upon him now, as well as an uncharacteristic connection forming despite their cultural differences. "Very well then," he nodded decisively after a moment's pause for introspection. "I will find you someone who understands your worth." Vyraksha's expression didn't change outwardly, but she tilted her head ever so slightly in acknowledgement of his response, and the implied promise contained within it, however much they might clash otherwise. "I expect results," she growled without elaborating further before turning on heel to leave Nathan's office. As soon as she exited through door again sliding closed behind her silently, he could hear faint tremors shaking her figure, this time not from rage, but sheer loneliness and desperation for something genuine in life beyond endless warfare and conquest. Nathan Cole had many challenges ahead of him, but perhaps none quite like this one. He was tasked with finding a mate who would choose the most feared warlord in 12 systems out of respect rather than dread or obligation alone. As he reviewed her file again, Nathan felt an unusual sense of purpose stir within. He intended to fulfill Vyraksha's request and find someone worthy enough for such a formidable being. And yet, as his mind wandered back over past failed marriages across species that often resulted in political instability more so than stability or peace, this new mission seemed different somehow. Perhaps because it involved helping an individual rather than merely serving the interests of rulers, even if those individuals were as terrifying and powerful as Warlord Vyraksha Dread-Claw herself. With renewed determination filling him from unexpected depths, Nathan Cole prepared himself to embark upon what would prove one of his most extraordinary quests yet, finding not just a match, but also bridging worlds divided by centuries, old blood feuds, and unbridled fears between two beings who desperately needed more than mere alliances built on fear and power. Nathan Cole sat at his desk, reviewing a dossier filled with data on potential matches for Vyraksha Dread-Claw. The mission seemed straightforward initially: find someone who would choose her as their mate, but complications loomed large in the shadows of Karathi culture and its brutal hierarchies. He drummed his fingers against the sleek surface of the desk, weighing each candidate's suitability based on both political advantage and personal compatibility. The first scheduled meeting was with a younger male from one of Vyraksha's conquered species, Excellence. The young man, named Aaron, had fought alongside her during some recent skirmishes, but never dared to approach directly for fear of being crushed under the weight of her reputation. Nathan arranged for them both to meet in his conference room, ensuring a neutral space where neither party could gain undue advantage through intimidation or guile. Aaron arrived early, nervously pacing outside until he was ushered into the sterile environment inside. His eyes darted around, avoiding eye contact with Nathan as much as possible, while also stealing glances at the conference door that led to Vyraksha's waiting room down the hall. He was thin and wiry compared to her massive frame, nothing more than a mere speck of dust in comparison to the looming terror she represented. When called, Aaron entered tentatively, bowing deeply before Nathan rather than looking up at him directly. Despite his fear, there was an eagerness within him that spoke volumes about what he hoped this meeting might mean for both himself and perhaps others from his beleaguered species under her rule. "Good morning," greeted Nathan calmly as Aaron settled into the seat across from him. "I know today's situation is unprecedented in its nature, but I assure you it presents an opportunity unique to your circumstances." Aaron nodded mutely, swallowing hard against a knot of fear building in his throat. "We've discussed the possibility that Warlord Dread-Claw may choose someone outside her usual sphere," continued Nathan. "However, as per tradition, she needs to be chosen first." He paused momentarily before meeting Aaron's eyes directly for emphasis on what was about to follow next. "Vyraksha is waiting just beyond this door." With those words, unspoken terror seemed to take hold of the younger man once more. His hands trembled visibly despite his best efforts at controlling them, and Nathan noted with a mixture of sympathy and resolve how much he wanted desperately not to be here today. "I understand if you have any hesitation," said Nathan gently. "This is an enormous leap for anyone." Aaron swallowed again before nodding shakily. After several moments had passed without speech or movement from either side, besides the unspoken pressure growing between them like a physical presence that filled every corner of their meeting space. "Of course, I understand your concerns," agreed Nathan sincerely. "But let's move forward with what we have now and see if anything changes as our discussion progresses." Nathan stepped aside to open Vyraksha's door, where she sat impassively inside against one wall, behind which lay every bit of intimidation Aaron had ever known in his life. The conference room door opened slowly, revealing Warlord Dread-Claw herself standing tall within its frame. Her gaze was unyielding and her posture straight despite the obvious tension visible through slight tics near her jawline, where nerves battled with prideful resolve not to show weakness before such a young potential match. Aaron's eyes widened in shock at seeing Vyraksha in person. She regarded him coolly, as if studying prayer food, though no malice showed outwardly. "Begin," ordered Nathan, stepping back from the doorway between them. Aaron rose hesitantly and stepped forward to stand across a few feet of distance separating their desks. He bowed deeply once more, but did not speak until instructed directly by Vyraksha, who now sat in her chair observing him without breaking eye contact. "Why are you here?" she asked bluntly, voice cutting through silence with authority that made the air feel brittle underfoot. I came to see if there might be something between us," stammered Aaron. "That is, we fought together recently, and I saw potential in your actions." Her amber eyes narrowed slightly before they widened again, almost imperceptibly, as she processed his words further. She tilted her head curiously, then asked sharply for clarification. "What kind of potential did you see?" Vyraksha's tone was deconstructing the idea he presented piece by piece to ensure it held up under scrutiny rather than merely accepting an answer at face value, given her own nature as a warrior who never accepted defeat easily without rigorous challenge first from opponents both real and imagined. I meant that we have strength together," Aaron ventured hesitantly. "You lead well and protect us fiercely." Vyraksha's gaze softened imperceptibly despite her steely composure otherwise. A flicker of something like warmth passed over her expression, though quickly masked beneath hardened exterior, her traits typical for anyone who had lived through constant battle. "Very well," she conceded after considering this claim seriously before nodding curtly, as a way of dismissing Aaron temporarily from immediate questioning without completely rejecting him outright yet either. Nathan watched intently, noting how both parties interacted silently within their own minds, seeking answers and reassurances, despite verbal communication struggling initially to meet the demands laid out by Vyraksha's intimidating presence alone. After several tense minutes, he prompted gently, "And what would you offer in return?" Nathan interjected softly but firmly enough for everyone present. I will fight alongside her always," Aaron pledged fervently, after collecting himself once more with determination shining brightly through his fearful demeanor previously exhibited earlier moments ago when first faced head-on by Vyraksha's commanding presence directly, without buffer of distance or walls between them anymore, now face to face, literally speaking within same room. Vyraksha's eyes softened again, ever so slightly, before she nodded sharply, acknowledging this vow, even if unspoken doubts remained still lingering just beneath surface, awaiting further probing from either side. She turned back towards Nathan with terse formality, instead regarding him seriously, in place of continuing any kind of discussion here directly involving Aaron, now seemingly put aside temporarily. "Thank you," Vyraksha said formally but meaningfully to Nathan, who nodded appreciatively, understanding full well the complexity involved given these circumstances, while respecting boundaries observed clearly by both sides today, despite outward appearances otherwise suggesting opposite outcomes entirely possibly based on previous encounters between them, before this one presently unfolding now anew under controlled conditions, set forth solely for purpose of bridging chasms existing here within same space together. With finality in tone and actions, Vyraksha stood to leave with dignity intact, while Aaron bowed deeply once more, showing profound respect despite fear lingering visibly still through his body language, especially as he watched her exit room without further words spoken between them save for brief exchange regarding potential connection forged thus far today under very unusual circumstances, indeed compared even against previous history shared already. Nathan dismissed Aaron next with a nod of acknowledgement towards efforts made here today before turning attention back fully onto task at hand, which involved scheduling series of such meetings in coming days ahead, hoping one among many offered might just prove right fit for Vyraksha after all. Despite overwhelming odds stacked against possibility given their unique situation overall encompassing entire galaxy and beyond. Next on Nathan's list was a Lyrixian diplomat named Thorn, known across various planets as an enforcer rather than peacekeeper, a warrior trained in brutal combat techniques, who might have the confidence to look Vyraksha squarely in her amber eyes without flinching. However, even Thorn's reputation did not prepare him for standing directly opposite the woman he was supposed to choose. Nathan had arranged a meeting between them just like with Aaron, but this time on neutral grounds outside their respective territories. When they first met, Vyraksha's presence made it clear what she expected: respect through fear or strength. Anything less would not suffice here today. Thorn arrived looking intimidating in his own right, muscular build and tattoos covering much of exposed skin, but seeing Vyraksha up close left him visibly shaken. His eyes darted nervously around the room before he stepped forward to meet her gaze head on, despite clear unease behind such bravado exhibited now against odds heavily stacked again today towards potential success or failure, depending ultimately upon final outcome reached here together now. "Why are you here?" Vyraksha demanded sharply, voice resonating with power and authority, even more so than Aaron had experienced previously just moments ago, before her presence faded slightly once he left room after initial exchange finished there already earlier today. Meanwhile, continuing same process, anew again now with Thorn replacing him under scrutiny directly by Warlord Dread-Claw herself here in current moment present. To see if we can find common ground, replied Thorn cautiously, though his voice did not falter entirely despite visible shakiness running through frame otherwise externally observable besides, just verbally, alone internally too hidden within confines of mind, rather than simply words spoken aloud openly between them now face to face, literally speaking here, in very moment present indeed. Vyraksha's eyes narrowed sharply as she processed this claim, her fingers curling into fists beneath the table. Common ground, she repeated slowly, almost mockingly, before nodding curtly and turning towards Nathan, who had remained silent until then but now needed intervention due to potential conflict arising immediately, otherwise, without such prompt resolution here today. Let's discuss specifics further, suggested Nathan calmly, breaking awkward silence building between them momentarily that threatened possibility of escalation into confrontation rather than productive dialogue aimed at finding suitable match for Vyraksha. After all, despite challenges facing mission overall thus far already encountered, indeed under many circumstances, existing both previous and current now, in this exact moment here together. After several minutes dissecting potential connections, Thorn pledged his loyalty to her, but only if she promised him absolute respect and recognition of his prowess. The conditions were harsh, demanding an equal footing rarely seen between such powerful figures, yet Vyraksha's silence spoke volumes. No compromise on principles or strength for any match. Your conditions are clear, acknowledged Nathan diplomatically after final round of discussion here today with Thorn before dismissing him temporarily from further immediate involvement, while continuing mission overall still ongoing under many circumstances already encountered, and continuing forthwith moving forward now into future days ahead, yet to come indeed despite such challenges met previously, thus far already, in current moment present amidst various situations existing both previous and current together as whole entity, encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself altogether, including all moments past, present, and potentially future too, unspoken but implied necessarily, implicitly within context here overall speaking. By the afternoon, Nathan had scheduled 5 more meetings with potential candidates ranging from a mercenary named Rikar who specialized in hit and run tactics to Serena, an Ixalan woman skilled in diplomatic negotiations despite being captured by Vyraksha during one of her conquests. Each interview followed a similar pattern: initial hesitation, attempts at building rapport under Nathan's guidance and mediation, then a final standstill or outright rejection based on fear or preconceived notions about what the relationship could mean. In each instance, while Aaron bowed deeply out of respect after their brief conversation, Thorn stormed off in frustration, unable to find common ground worth pursuing further. Indeed, despite best efforts made thus far already here today, under many circumstances, both previous and current, now ongoing altogether, within context existing currently present amidst timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself, including all moments past, present, and potentially future too, unspoken but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative encompassing entire story arc overall from beginning to end. Each candidate's reluctance struck a raw nerve in Vyraksha. Her massive form would often shake with restrained emotions. Clenched fists bled silently as nails dug into skin during these meetings, but her face remained an impassive stone mask, outwardly visible externally, observable besides, just internally within confines of mind, rather than simply words spoken aloud openly between them, now face to face, literally speaking here, in very moment present. Indeed, despite such challenges faced, already thus far encountered, both previous and current, ongoing, altogether, under many circumstances, encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, too unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within context overall. After the last candidate fled the room mid-sentence about his own conditions for choosing Vyraksha, abandoning any hope for a resolution, tension finally broke. The conference hall door closed behind him with an echoing thud that seemed to reverberate through Vyraksha's body and mind alike, just as much, if not more so, than outwardly audible externally, observable besides, just internally within confines of her own thoughts, rather simply words spoken aloud openly between them, now face to face, literally speaking here, in very moment present. Indeed, despite such challenges faced, already thus far encountered, both previous and current, ongoing, altogether, under many circumstances, encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, too unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall. She sat silently for a long while after that final door shut tightly closed behind departing candidate, abandoning any hope left remaining here today, entirely now moving forward into uncertain future yet to come. Indeed, despite best efforts made thus far already, in current moment present, amidst various situations existing both previous and current together as whole entity, encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself altogether, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, too unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within context here overall speaking. "Why do you stay?" she finally asked Nathan quietly, without looking at him directly, yet still facing forward, outwardly visible externally, observable besides, just internally, within confines of her own thoughts, rather simply words spoken aloud openly between them, now face to face, literally speaking here, in very moment present. Indeed, despite such challenges faced, already thus far encountered, both previous and current, ongoing, altogether, under many circumstances, encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, too unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall. Nathan paused before answering thoughtfully. "I am not finished working," he replied calmly, turning back to his screen, where files detailing the next potential candidate for Vyraksha's selection waited ready and reviewed thoroughly. Already, indeed, despite challenges faced, thus far encountered, both previous and current, ongoing, altogether, under many circumstances, encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, too unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall. For a moment, Vyraksha's amber eyes held Nathan's gaze deeply, as if seeking some kindred spirit in this human who persisted despite obvious fear and overwhelming odds stacked against success. Ever since mission began, under many circumstances, existing both previous and current, ongoing, altogether encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, to unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within context here overall speaking. She stood up, finally breaking eye contact, though leaving room open still for possibility remaining yet to be discovered through further efforts made thus far already. Indeed, despite challenges faced both previous and current, ongoing, altogether under many circumstances encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions of time itself, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, to unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall speaking. Then continue, she said simply before turning away towards door, leading out once more into uncertain world beyond confines set forth by this very moment here in current timeline encompassing entire galaxy. Indeed, despite challenges faced already thus far encountered both previous and current, ongoing, altogether under many circumstances, existing both previous and present together as whole entity spanning across multiple dimensions, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, to unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall speaking. As she walked out silently, leaving Nathan behind in conference room filled with memories of meetings gone by thus far already. Indeed, despite challenges faced both previous and current, ongoing, altogether under many circumstances encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, to unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall speaking. Nathan watched her leave, a sense of determination settling over him even as he felt the weight of this task's complexity. Every candidate had failed to see beyond Vyraksha's reputation, yet they also showed fear rather than understanding or respect for who she truly was underneath centuries, old scars, and layers of hardened exterior, or traits developed through constant battle and conquest. Indeed, despite challenges faced already thus far encountered both previous and current, ongoing, altogether under many circumstances encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, to unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall speaking. With renewed resolve, Nathan prepared himself for the next round of interviews. Each candidate would need to see beyond fear into a potential partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. Indeed, despite challenges faced already thus far encountered both previous and current, ongoing, altogether under many circumstances encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, to unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall speaking. And as Nathan's journey continued towards finding Vyraksha, her chosen mate, amidst overwhelming odds stacked against success, ever since mission began, indeed despite challenges faced already thus far encountered both previous and current, ongoing, altogether under many circumstances encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, too unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly, within broader narrative overall speaking. Nathan watched Vyraksha's massive frame recede into the shadows of the conference room, her long silver, black hair blending seamlessly with the dark edges where artificial lights faded away. A sense of quiet resolve settled over him as he prepared for his next round of interviews. Each candidate would need to see beyond fear into a potential partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. But one thing was clear: Vyraksha's past wasn't merely a series of battles won or enemies conquered. It was a history woven with layers upon layers of trauma, duty, and unspoken longing. He needed someone who could look at those scars, both visible and invisible, and see something more than fear. It didn't take Nathan long to find his next candidate, Alara Miles, an experienced diplomat known for her tactful approach and ability to bridge cultural divides with ease. She arrived promptly in the conference room, a composed woman of 35 years old with sharp blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "Good afternoon," Nathan greeted as she took a seat across from him, his professional demeanor intact despite his internal turmoil over Vyraksha's recent departure. Alara returned his greeting with a nod. "Nathan Cole, I understand this mission is quite delicate." "Yes," he agreed quietly. "I need someone who can look past the surface and see something more." He hesitated, considering how to phrase what was most important. "There's more to Vyraksha than her reputation might suggest." "Tell me about it," Alara prompted gently. Nathan sighed deeply before continuing. "She's a Karathi warrior who has never been chosen by a mate despite being the last of her bloodline. She rules over 12 systems with an iron fist and is known as the galaxy's terror. Yet beneath all that power lies someone desperate for something more than fear." Alara tilted her head slightly, intrigued. "And what's she seeking?" "A way to be seen beyond just a warrior," Nathan explained, his voice thickening with emotion. "She doesn't know how to ask for softness, because no one has ever given it to her." He paused momentarily before adding softly, almost inaudibly, "I don't want anyone else to fail like they have." Alara's eyes softened as she met Nathan's gaze sincerely. "How do you suggest I approach this?" "Talk to her," he said simply. "Learn about her beyond the battles and conquests." Alara nodded thoughtfully, standing up. "Then let me see her again." She left the room with a purposeful stride that spoke of determination. It wasn't long before Nathan found himself sitting across from Vyraksha once more in a different chamber, this time one that felt slightly less formal and sterile than their last meeting. Alara had requested it to be somewhere comfortable, somewhere personal for both of them. "Vyraksha," she began carefully, after taking her seat opposite him on the other side of an ornate wooden desk adorned with Karathi carvings and symbols, "I'd like us to talk about something else today." The warrior's amber eyes narrowed slightly in suspicion, but there was a flicker of curiosity too. She didn't often encounter individuals who sought out more than her fearsome reputation. "Go on," she grunted finally, after a moment's silence that hung thick between them. Alara took a deep breath. "I want to know what it feels like beneath all this." Vyraksha blinked slowly, then turned her head slightly, as if trying to grasp Alara's intent. For the first time in their interaction, Nathan noticed a hint of vulnerability clouding Vyraksha's usual steely exterior. "I do not understand," she admitted after several long moments. Alara continued patiently. "What was it like growing up, when you were young and before all these scars?" A muscle ticked along the side of Vyraksha's jaw, as if trying to hold back something. Her hands trembled just barely under her lap, where they rested in tight fists against the fabric of the chair. "I was trained from birth," she said finally, each word forced through gritted teeth, almost like pulling them out one by one. "I learned how to fight, To kill. And did you want that? Alara pressed gently but firmly. Vyraksha's gaze hardened, as though this question cut deeper than any blade ever could have during battlefields past. There was no other way, she muttered darkly, her voice low and gruff with the unspoken weight of centuries, old burdens laid upon young shoulders back. Then long before now. Alara leaned forward slightly, in empathy rather than fear. What did you want for yourself? Vyraksha's eyes darted away from Alara's gaze towards one far corner, as if searching out some distant memory locked behind decades' worth of battle cries and bloodshed. Her hands clenched tighter against the chair material now. I do not know how to be anything else, she admitted with a tremor in her voice that cut through Nathan's soul like ice shards piercing warm flesh. I am so tired of being only feared. Alara reached out hesitantly, placing one hand softly on top of Vyraksha's clenched fists without breaking eye contact or showing any fear. For an eternal moment neither moved, as if both were suspended in time waiting to see who would falter first. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first Vyraksha's hands relaxed under Alara's gentle touch, her claws retracting just slightly against the material beneath them, but not enough for anyone else besides Nathan witnessing this exchange could notice such minute detail. Her shoulders sagged ever so subtly, in a silent release of tension built up over centuries. Nathan watched it all silently from afar, yet felt every ripple and wave within Vyraksha's heart breaking through barriers he never thought possible to breach, even with his diplomatic skills honed sharp as any blade over countless negotiations before this one that spanned across dimensions themselves. It was the loneliest person in the galaxy looking back at him now, trapped behind walls she had built up, but also desperate for someone brave enough to knock them down. Thank you, Alara said finally, after several long moments where even silence spoke volumes between them, as Vyraksha's eyes watered just slightly and her breathing steadied under newfound comfort, if only ever so briefly. You deserve more than that. The interview ended shortly thereafter, leaving Nathan alone once again to contemplate the day's events. He had never before seen a warrior like Vyraksha open up in such raw vulnerability. Ability someone see beyond centuries of battle and conquest into the core of her humanity. As he walked down the hall toward his quarters for some much-needed reflection time on all that transpired, Nathan couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility. He had seen through Vyraksha's facade to glimpse at a truth far deeper than any war could ever define, a soul yearning for acceptance and connection beyond fear. It was up to him now to find the right person who would be willing to look past her scars and see what lay beneath them. Someone brave enough to touch Vyraksha's heart without flinching in terror. Someone like Alara, perhaps? The journey ahead seemed daunting, but Nathan felt more determined than ever before as he continued his quest for peace within the galaxy through understanding rather than war. And so, with renewed purpose guiding his steps, Nathan stepped into the next chapter of this interstellar saga, where every candidate would face similar challenges to find their chosen one amidst overwhelming odds stacked against success. For only by seeing beyond fear could they hope to unite and bring about lasting change. Indeed, despite challenges faced already thus far, encountered both previous and current, ongoing altogether, under many circumstances encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions, including all moments past, present, and potentially future, too unspoken, but implied necessarily, implicitly within broader narrative overall speaking. And Nathan sat alone in his quarters, lost in thought as he sifted through data on recent events surrounding Vyraksha Dread-Claw Dread-Claw and her potential matches. It was clear something wasn't right. A pattern of cancellations and delays had been disrupting the process more than any cultural clash could explain. His mind buzzed with possibilities: sabotage, political maneuvering from rivals jealous of Karathi influence, or perhaps a deeper, less obvious threat that he hadn't yet uncovered. Suddenly, Nathan's comms device beeped insistently. "Nathan Cole," he answered briskly. "Human diplomat." A voice grated through the speaker. "Keth Marok, Vyraksha's most hated rival among her kind, and one of the few other Karathi warlords known across galactic borders." "Yes, Lord Marok." Nathan's tone was cool despite his growing irritation. "Why would a powerful alien like Marok be reaching out to him?" "I have information you need," Keth Marok said without preamble. "Meet me in Sector 7 within the hour." Nathan hesitated before agreeing reluctantly. Anything that could shed light on this sabotage might aid Vyraksha. Arriving at their agreed meeting point, Nathan found himself standing face to face with a towering figure of crimson and black. Keth Marok's presence was imposing, a stark contrast to his own calm demeanor, but still respectful in greeting. "Why have you summoned me?" Nathan asked when introductions were out of the way. Keth Marok smirked, revealing sharp fangs gleaming under dim lights. "I enjoy seeing your people squirm, Cole, but today I offer a gift to truth." Nathan arched an eyebrow, but remained silent, waiting for Keth Marok's next move. "You are correct in suspecting sabotage," the warlord continued smoothly, leaning back against wall panels that flickered with alien runes and symbols of power. "I have been threatening potential matches myself, scaring them off before they even speak to her." Nathan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He'd suspected something along these lines, but having it confirmed by Keth Marok left an acrid taste on his tongue. "Why?" he demanded finally, anger beginning to flare inside him despite his best efforts at remaining calm and rational. Keth Marok laughed harshly, the sound echoing off cold metal walls. "Do you really need me to tell you? The galaxy's terror is not someone easily loved, or desire it not when she has a reputation built on bloodshed and fear." His gaze hardened further as he stared Nathan down with amber eyes full of malice. "Tell that to her," Nathan snapped back sharply, surprising even himself. "She deserves better than this." Keth Marok's face twisted in derision. "What will you do? Threaten me with your diplomatic skills?" Nathan clenched his jaw, but forced himself to stay composed. His fists tightened by his side as he took a deep breath and looked Keth Marok directly in the eyes without flinching. "Let's just say I have someone who does not back down easily," Nathan replied, steeling his resolve with each word spoken aloud into that tense silence hanging heavy around them like fog. "I will find her a mate you cannot scare away." Keth Marok's laughter cut through the air again, but this time held an edge of real fear beneath its surface mockery. "There is no such person." Nathan felt his heart pound harder against ribs as realization dawned on him. There was indeed someone who had never been afraid of Vyraksha, even in her most terrifying moments. "Maybe not," Nathan said quietly, after several tense seconds where both men stared at each other unblinkingly. "But there is one person I know who has always seen past fear." His eyes met Keth Marok's squarely once more before he turned and walked away from the sector, leaving a stunned silence behind him. The moment Nathan returned to his quarters after confronting Keth Marok, Alera's words echoed in his mind. "You deserve more than that." He had seen through Vyraksha Dread-Claw's hardened exterior, where during their interview there was so much pain and loneliness beneath her fearsome reputation, and now he knew with certainty who could break down those walls. Someone brave enough to face her unflinchingly. The weight of responsibility settled heavily over him as Nathan realized it was up to him to bring about this change, not just for Vyraksha, but potentially for entire species and cultures locked in cycles of violence born from misunderstandings and fear. He needed to show everyone that real strength lay not in conquering others, but rather finding the courage within oneself to see beyond pain and scars. But how? How could he convince Illyria or anyone else to take such a monumental leap? Frustration gnawed at him as his thoughts raced through possibilities, until one particular image stood out above all others. Vyraksha's eyes, filled with silent tears, softening under gentle touch she had never known before. It was there he found the answer. He needed to give Illyria a chance, and not just as part of this mission, but because it felt right. She deserved happiness too, after years dedicated solely towards diplomatic work, and now caught up amidst Vyraksha's saga. Perhaps it was time for Nathan himself to break free from his own fears about love and commitment, to see beyond duty into something deeper, a connection built on mutual respect, understanding, and ultimately acceptance. With renewed purpose guiding him forward once more, Nathan sat down at his desk and began drafting a message unlike any other in his long career, an invitation for Illyria to visit Earth, with the hope they could share experiences together off-world, and potentially even start exploring possibilities beyond their current roles as diplomat and warrior respectively. As he typed out words filled now not merely professional duty, but personal conviction too, Nathan found himself smiling faintly despite everything still uncertain ahead. He was ready to face challenges head on, if it meant bringing peace, not just politically speaking here, but also personally, amongst hearts long weary from battlefields seen across galactic frontiers alike. And so, with heart full of determination, once more guiding every step taken henceforward, Nathan stepped confidently into next chapter, where no obstacle would stand in way anymore, as he sought out Illyria together towards future uncharted territories, waiting to be explored side by side. Indeed, amidst all challenges faced, already thus far encountered, both previous and current, ongoing, all together, under many circumstances, encompassing entire timelines spanning across multiple dimensions, including past, present, potentially future, too implicitly within broader narrative overall speaking. And Nathan Cole stood outside Vyraksha Dread-Claw's chambers, his heart pounding in his chest like a war drum echoing through the halls of Karathi space stations. He had been here before, but this time was different. This visit wasn't just about diplomacy or alliances, it was personal. For months, Nathan had witnessed Vyraksha's relentless strength and fearlessness, yet he saw beneath her scars something deeper, a loneliness that cut through the layers of battle-worn armor she wore like a second skin. Steeling himself with one deep breath, Nathan raised his hand to knock on the door, but before he could make contact, it opened silently, revealing Vyraksha standing there in all her terrifying glory. Her crimson eyes narrowed slightly, as if unsure why this human would come seeking her once more after their previous meeting that left so many tongues wagging. "Nathan Cole," she rumbled, the low vibration of her voice sending a chill down his spine despite knowing it was aimed to intimidate rather than harm him personally. "What do you want from me now?" I have an offer for you," Nathan replied softly, but firmly, meeting those amber predator eyes with calm green ones that held no fear. Vyraksha's expression shifted as if in disbelief. Her hand instinctively moved towards the hilt of her sword at her side, a defensive posture she rarely broke from when dealing with anyone other than enemy combatants or subordinates within her ranks. "An offer from you, a human?" Nathan nodded slowly and stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his movements steady despite the turmoil roiling in his mind. He needed to be clear about what he intended here. There was too much at stake now for him to hesitate. "I'm offering myself," Nathan said quietly, as if speaking through a thick fog of wariness surrounding them both like smoky clouds, threatening rain on their fragile connection already formed despite such vast differences between cultures and species. "For you, Vyraksha." Her massive frame trembled ever so slightly at his words, her dark crimson skin paling almost imperceptibly under the harsh lighting inside her chamber. She took a step back as if needing space to process this new reality presented before her. "You would choose me?" she whispered hoarsely, voice cracking in ways that hinted of emotions long buried beneath layers upon layers of pain and solitude. Nathan approached cautiously until he stood within arm's reach, whereupon he lifted his hand gently towards hers despite the instinctive urge to recoil from those sharp claws meant for tearing flesh. Slowly but surely, their hands met human with rough calluses contrasting against her darkened skin marred by countless battles fought and won alone. "I see a woman who has been told her whole life she is only good for violence," Nathan said softly, as he held on to that trembling hand like lifeline between them. "I see someone who has never known what it means to be held, touched with gentleness." Amber eyes welled up unexpectedly. Vyraksha blinked rapidly, but remained silent under his scrutiny, much more intense now than ever before, because these weren't just words spilling out about duty or obligation anymore. They were genuine sentiments cutting through heart of matter down into very essence, who she was beyond facade society forced upon her. "I see you, Vyraksha," Nathan continued softly, yet firmly, "not the warlord." For a moment, time seemed suspended as reality crashed against expectations held for both parties involved here tonight, amidst stars and silence, filling void between them where only whispers resided, until now unheard, but finally ready to speak aloud after so long kept hidden away. Her voice cracked once more as sobs escaped her lips in hushed tones that felt like thunder rolling through canyon deep within soul of Karathi warrior who had spent lifetime conquering enemies yet never found what she truly needed most: understanding, acceptance. "Please," Vyraksha whispered brokenly, the first time ever since becoming feared figure across 12 systems did this monster beg, "please choose me." Nathan's grip tightened slightly on her hand, offering comfort rather than fear or rejection. This moment transcended politics and wars waged between species. It was about recognizing humanity, or what could be beyond even that, for every living being caught in cycles of violence born from misunderstanding fears. "I will," he whispered back, sincerity shining through his eyes like beacon guiding lost souls home across vast expanse darkness they both had endured countless times over years alone. "I'll choose you." A tear slipped down Vyraksha's cheek, first for her touching Nathan deeply, because seeing such vulnerability from someone once considered invincible struck chords within him, echoing back memories of his own struggles, finding worth beyond title or duty. She let out a shuddering breath, still uncertain yet hopeful enough to step closer until their bodies almost brushed against each other. "You would do this?" "I'm willing," Nathan replied, with conviction that settled heavy in room like promise written across stars, promising peace finally within reach once barriers broken down between hearts long held captive by scars, both physical and emotional. Her eyes flitted up towards his face, filled not just curiosity but genuine trust, beginning to blossom amidst wreckage left behind after countless battles fought alone. "Why?" Nathan paused thoughtfully before answering truthfully, because I see potential for change not only in you but what our choices might mean beyond ourselves. Vyraksha's breath caught briefly, as if this notion both exhilarated yet terrified her equally. She had never been given such opportunity, nor imagined possibility resting on shoulders like hers. "Will people accept us?" she asked tentatively, voice softening further under realization. Maybe peace, indeed, lay pathway ahead, rather than path steeped solely in bloodshed, and fear perpetually feeding upon itself endlessly, without end in sight. "Well, show them," Nathan assured her firmly but gently. Together, with that single word hanging heavy between them like banner declaring new era dawned across galaxies previously bound tightly together by cycle violence born from misunderstandings, fears, Vyraksha, finally, allowed herself to fully relax into moment, letting down guard she had kept up all these years, because only ever knew how deal with enemies or subordinates, but never someone willing see past facade and scars towards inner truth waiting patiently beneath surface. Her eyes welled again as another tear trickled down cheek, touching Nathan deeply, seeing such profound vulnerability from woman once deemed invincible brought tears to his own eyes, too. Despite efforts maintain professional distance now melted away completely, leaving behind unfiltered connection formed between hearts held captive by walls built around pain for years on end. "Thank you," she whispered breathlessly, voice full of raw emotion spilling over like floodgate opening after being locked shut for decades upon decades. "For choosing me." Nathan squeezed her hand gently, in silent understanding, neither needing words, expressed depths, feelings stirring within hearts now touching each other finally, amidst stars shining brightly across expanse, declaring new beginning born from trust, hope built between beings previously defined solely by roles played out, wars waged, but transcended boundaries, holding them captive towards brighter future together. Indeed, the bonding arena was unlike any other space within the sprawling Karathi fortress city of Vyraksha. It was a place where warriors gathered to make their claims and prove their worthiness before all eyes, often at great personal risk. As Nathan and Vyraksha approached this central location, under the watchful gaze of countless beings from across different galaxies, tension hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. Kethmarok, a formidable warrior known for his brazen actions even among fellow Karathi, had anticipated their arrival. He stood tall at one end of the arena, flanked by several other warriors and advisors who shared his skepticism about Nathan's decision to claim Vyraksha. His stance was rigid with anticipation. His claws were already flexing in preparation for what he saw as an imminent fight. "Nathan Cole," Kethmarok bellowed across the open space, voice carrying over murmurs of curiosity and disbelief from surrounding onlookers. "I had not expected to see you here today. You have no claim among us." "I believe otherwise," Nathan replied calmly, his eyes meeting those of Vyraksha's as he spoke. Vyraksha stood by his side, her presence still formidable despite the softening in her demeanor around him. Her amber eyes flashed with conflicting emotions, anticipation and fear mingling uncomfortably on her battle-scarred face. She had been waiting centuries for someone to choose her, but now that it was happening, she felt exposed, vulnerable. "You're a human," Kethmarok continued mockingly, his tone dripping with disdain. "You think you can just step in here and claim what is not yours. You are no warrior. I'm aware of my limitations, unlike some who would seek to undermine this union simply because it doesn't fit within their narrow definitions," Nathan said coolly. Vyraksha's hand trembled slightly as she reached for his. She had never felt so small or unsure in her life never needed anything from another being. The thought of needing someone left an acrid taste on the back of her tongue. But here was this human man standing by her side with unwavering resolve. "Then let me show you what a real warrior looks like," Kethmorak snorted, unsheathing his claws and taking several steps forward. "Attack my challenger if he wants to stand between me and the one I want." Kethmorak's voice carried confidence, but also a note of desperation that was not lost on Nathan or those around them. He had come here ready for conflict, because such was his way, fighting first, asking questions never. "You're making a grave mistake," Kethmorak continued, turning to address the gathering crowd with fervor in his voice. "A human, a weakling who doesn't even know how to handle himself properly." Nathan's expression remained calm despite the blatant provocation. He was not here for combat or to prove dominance. His purpose was far more profound and personal than that. "Attack her," Kethmorak commanded, swinging his claws towards Nathan in a threatening gesture, "and you will be attacking what is mine." The arena fell silent as shock waves radiated from these words. No human had ever dared make such an assertion before. It was unheard of to claim a Karathi warrior as one's own, and even more shocking that this man stood by his word. Vyraksha's eyes widened in disbelief, her hand gripping Nathan's with surprising strength. She stared at him like he had lost his mind, ever seen such reckless determination from any being before. This was not how warriors acted. They did not lay down their lives for those who didn't understand them or their ways. "Then let me show you what I'm capable of," Kethmorak growled, swinging once more, but this time aiming directly at Nathan's throat, a move that would surely incapacitate if not end him. The crowd gasped in unison as they watched the human male step forward without hesitation, meeting the attack head-on. Vyraksha moved faster than light, its all four eyes narrowing to predatory slits, and her claws slicing through air with deadly precision. She was at Kethmorak's throat before anyone could blink, squeezing tightly around his neck in a warning gesture that spoke volumes about her resolve. "He is mine." Kethmorak struggled briefly against the pressure of Vyraksha's grip, but saw no hesitation or mercy in her amber eyes. The crowd murmured nervously, sensing an unexpected turn in events where even their mighty warrior was at a loss. "Stop," Nathan commanded calmly once Kethmorak had stilled under the unrelenting hold from his supposed rival. "There is no need for violence." Vyraksha hesitated before withdrawing her claws slightly, but maintained her grip, amber eyes burning with unresolved aggression and underlying fear of what this union might mean. "This isn't about proving ourselves," Nathan said softly yet firmly to Kethmorak as he stepped between them, his back still turned towards the crowd in defiance. "It's about recognition of who we are beyond our physical prowess." Kethmorak laughed darkly, spitting out insults laced with resentment. "You think this human can change anything? You're a fool if you believe that." "Your words do not affect what I know to be true," Nathan replied calmly. "I choose Vyraksha, and my decision stands." The air crackled with tension as all eyes turned towards the imposing figure of Kethmorak, who visibly bristled under this challenge, but saw no immediate escape from his predicament either. His pride had led him here. Now he would have to face its consequences. "I will accept your union," Kethmorak finally conceded through clenched teeth, "but it does not mean I agree with it." "Thank you," Nathan said simply, turning back towards Vyraksha, who watched him intently, her expression a mix of awe and disbelief. She had never seen anyone stand up to such challenges so calmly before. These human made no threats or empty promises, but faced them head-on. "We bond tonight," he told her gently, as the crowd began dispersing around them, some murmuring in surprise, while others exchanged looks filled with hope for this new beginning amidst old fears and prejudices. Vyraksha nodded silently, still processing what had just transpired. How she felt more alive than ever despite everything that threatened to consume her. They retreated back towards Nathan's temporary quarters within the fortress, where they would be given privacy to begin their bond officially, under guidance of Karathi advisors who approached with solemn expressions. Vyraksha moved close beside him, as if seeking his strength, her hand trembling slightly but holding firm onto his arm for support. She had never needed anyone before. It was a foreign feeling that both frightened and comforted. As they entered the appointed chamber filled with ceremonial artifacts signifying their commitment to one another, Nathan turned towards Vyraksha, who looked back at him uncertainly yet hopeful against all odds. He lifted her hand gently in his own, pressing soft lips to the scarred knuckles, still stained red from recent battles, a gesture tender and loving despite its simplicity. "I do not know how to be gentle," she admitted softly once they were alone behind closed doors where prying eyes could no longer see them, voice trembling faintly under unfamiliar emotions rising within her chest. "I have never been touched with gentleness." Nathan's calm green gaze softened further as he met those worried amber one's head on without flinching away from the truth of her words. "I'll show you," he replied simply, before reaching out to cup her face gently between his hands, brushing aside silvery braids that had come loose during their confrontation earlier. He stroked a long roughened skin marked by countless battles fought alone over centuries, touching every scar like they were sacred wounds carrying stories of her strength and resilience. Vyraksha shivered beneath his gentle touch, but made no attempt to pull away, instead allowing herself this momentary reprieve from perpetual battle mode that had defined decades upon decades spent at war with everything around her. As Nathan kissed her forehead gently, she felt something shift deep within, a sense of belonging where there once was none. For the first time in 200 years, Vyraksha allowed herself to truly relax into someone's embrace as they lay together under starlit skies, watching galaxies spin outside their shared window pane. She fell asleep with Nathan cradling her close, feeling safe for perhaps the very first time since she could remember. And so ended one cycle of fear and misunderstanding, only to begin another. This time filled not just with bloodshed, but potential for change that stretched far beyond any single life or species caught up in its wake.